This is Michael Popok. Check your dial. It's time for Legal AF After Dark. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays is moving fast and furiously against the 18 co-conspirators of Donald Trump, try to bring them to justice for their role in the fake elector scandal. You've heard all about what the federal Department of Justice is doing, but don't sleep on what the attorney generals are doing around the country at the state level, including in Arizona. Not only do we have a fake elector who's flipped and pled guilty, but we have a former lawyer for Donald Trump, Jenna Ellis, who's cooperating with the attorney general and their investigators against all the inner circle of Donald Trump. We break it all down for you on Legal AF. Take a listen. Let's talk about Arizona. You wanna kick it off? Talk about what's going on with Chris Mays. Well, why don't you start with what was it? Because it was like 2 months ago, and now what is it now?
Yeah, Alex. So the Chris Mays, the Attorney General in the state of Arizona, brought a case against 18 defendants, right? I had to look that up. I'm like, 18, isn't that the number in Georgia too with Fani Willis? And I guess 18 is the magic number regarding their fake elector scheme. And the some of the people you've heard of, right? The Rudy Giuliani's of the world and Jenna Ellis, et cetera, some of the same familiar names and their roles in the fake elector scheme. And so what the big news that came out today, or this week, I should say, is that Jenna Ellis, who was Rudy Giuliani's attorney, they called her a senior, I can't remember what her title was, but a senior legal advisor for the 2020 Trump campaign. That was her claim to fame. And she also said she was part of an elite strike force team of lawyers who often appeared on behalf of Donald Trump and was there to fight all of the claims that the election was stolen. And she was often side by side with Rudy Giuliani. And so if you remember, in Georgia, she pled guilty. She had a very tearful plea of guilty. She pled to felonies and she agreed to cooperate there. And so that was what she did. And essentially during her plea and her allocution, she basically said, look, if I knew then what I know now, I would have never represented Trump. I would never have done these post-election challenges. I didn't do my due diligence. I'm so sorry. And then of course she gets prosecuted in Arizona, and she's cooperating though there. And what was interesting about this and what was different to me about this was rather than having her plead guilty and cooperate the way, frankly, the feds do it, the way New York does it, the way a lot of people do it, they actually dismissed the charges against her. They left it open to be able to refile if she doesn't testify truthfully and if she doesn't meet the obligations of her plea agreement. And there are certain things she had to do in there, including cooperate with the prosecution, make herself available, provide information, documents, and testify truthfully. But they dismissed it in advance. And that's very unusual for cooperation agreements. And in fact, they didn't do it in Georgia either. What normally happens in a cooperation agreement is you plead guilty and you don't make any promises as a prosecutor, right? You don't say cooperate and then you'll get X, because that's going to be used against you on cross-examination. It's like, if I'm the defense attorney, you say, well, you're only lying, you're lying because you have to say this because you're getting, you in exchange for getting a sweetheart deal. Really, you don't make any promises. And the prosecutor says, look, see how you do. I'm not making any promises. Be truthful, and we'll go from there. And you have to tell the truth. And if you don't tell the truth, and if you lie, not only is your case going to proceed, you can also be prosecuted for perjury. It gets worse for you. So it was just an interesting way of doing it. But the Attorney General Chris Mays said her insights are. This is a quote. Her insights are invaluable and will greatly aid the state in proving its case in court. So I don't know. She must be giving up some pretty good information to get an endorsement like that from the Attorney General and get her case dismissed in advance. If I were Rudy Giuliani, I'd be quaking in my boots because she must have some really good information.
I was going to translate that to all the other co-conspirators that work with her are effed. legal AF, right?
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, you would, like we had an example just to continue sort of our teachable moments. Like, Alan Weisselberg, you could never trust the guy. And so you had to dangle in front of him, potential jail term longer than it would be if he didn't properly cooperate in a couple of these trials. And even there, he effed it up and ended up getting convicted again of perjury because he couldn't get it right. Well, your old office, which is another testament to your old office, the fungible prosecutors that exist in the Manhattan DA's office, apparently. But here, you're right. It had to have been like the mother lode of information from Jenna Ellis. I mean, people remember there were 3 different lawyers who all pled guilty in Georgia. And they all had to read some sort of "I'm sorry" in court. Right. And then so Sidney Powell was like this ridiculous, she's like writing her mother in sleepaway camp about something she did wrong. And it was like, that's it. And Ken Chesborough was slightly better, but Jenna Ellis, this was Waterworks. This was Waterworld. This was, I was misled by older white men. I'm so, how did I ever get here? And then she spent now she's trying to don't buy any of that, by the way. Just go on her social media feed, Jenna in the morning. I'm not making it up, where she is MAGA through and through. She's just not a Trumper. She does everything else, though. And she's trying to recalibrate herself and save herself from 9 felony counts, which is what she was facing in Arizona. And also, she just barely missed getting disbarred off of what happened to her in Georgia. And kept her bar license. I don't even know how, but she did. But she's trying to make a living on Instagram and on social media and all of that. So, she is going, I am telling you, and you know it as a prosecutor, she's got the goods and she's bringing it. And if you think Rudy Giuliani's hair dye was melting down his face before, wait till you see it now. Because I'm telling you, these people, Mike Roman, John Eastman, Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, Boris Epstein, the inner circle for Donald Trump, many of whom who still are with Donald Trump, like Boris Epstein, who were already, many of them either indicted in Georgia, almost indicted in Georgia, or the like, have a lot to worry about. And it's not the last flip. There started with 18, as you so perfectly pointed out. It's down to 16. I said it's going to be like the International House of Pancakes. Flip, 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 flip. There's going to be at least another 5 or 8. First of all, the fake electors, there's 11 of them, now 10. Because Miss Pellegrino, who was a MAGA activist and ran a women's club for Republicans, she's now pled guilty as one of the fake electors because she's facing 9 felony counts. And none of them, they're never going to be helped by Donald Trump. The only ones that are sticking together and are willing to go to jail for Donald Trump are the ones that they think Donald Trump and MAGA will benefit in the future. And that this will be sort of a something of value or virtue to them because they went down with the ship and they weren't a snitch or whatever the phraseology is. But the rest, get out of harm's way, man. Run for cover. Every man for himself. So that's what happened in Georgia. Almost all the fake electors, except for the ones that were elected Republican officials, they all flipped. And that case was moving down a very nice track until it got stuck in the mud over Bonnie Willis having a relationship with somebody in her office. But that's not happening with Chris Mays in the Attorney General's office. And the importance of the Attorney Generals can't be understated, especially the ones that are in Democratic states, in blue states, because those convictions stick. They don't get, immunity doesn't help them. I mean, maybe a little bit, depending upon what the issues are. But immunities, Donald Trump wasn't indicted in any of these places. But the co-conspirators who don't have immunity, these convictions are going to stick. And they can't be pardoned away by President Donald Trump if that were ever to happen, which is becoming increasingly unlikely. And governors of those states are not going to be commuting and pardoning sentences. So they've been really, really important. I think, as we said 2 or 3 months ago, keep an eye closely on the attorney generals in this state and the work that they're doing. It's really, really important. Sometimes we just get sort of sidetracked talking about the Department of Justice and the feds. But, as you know well, state prosecutors and attorney generals are just as, if not more important in certain contexts than the feds.
Yeah, I'm as you know, proud state prosecutors. There's often a little bit of a snobbery, I will say. It's almost like people, who the Ivy League, people who go to Ivy League schools versus people who don't. There's a little bit of a elitism and snobbery. And same with federal versus state prosecutors. It's interesting. It's a very occasionally we get looked down upon, but I couldn't be more proud of state prosecutors as usual.
I think you look down on state prosecutors like Karen Friedman, Agnifilo at your own risk. You underestimate them at your own risk. Because when you're sitting in a jail or prison, it doesn't really matter which prosecutor puts you there. So I would not underestimate any of them, especially in New York. I think the Manhattan DA, of course, is the elite trial squadron, criminal prosecutor squadron. That's in my view. And I'll go to my grave with that view. Welcome back. That's a show we call Legal AF. We sit at the intersection of law and politics, and we bring you this podcast where we curate the top 4 or 5 stories and bring it to you Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the MeidasTouch Network. If you know about Legal AF, we appreciate you being here and part of our journey. If you want to help us grow organically by word of mouth, take that clip, that little bite-sized version of Legal AF, and send it off to people in your life and ask them to join us. If you've never heard of Legal AF, that's possible. We invite you to join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Wednesdays, I do the show with Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. Saturdays with Ben Mycelis, and then on hot takes like this about every hour right here on the MeidasTouch Network. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.